Well, after years of being on the fence about this camera and cameras like it, I finally did it. I bought the Fujifilm X100VI, and I have some thoughts on it after only 1 week of using it. To preface, this isn't going to be any kind of a review or even an evaluation of photos or use. It couldn't be that. I've only had the camera for a handful of days. Of course, over the next year, I'll dig into those thoughts and I'll give you reviews and analysis and all kinds of different things. But right now, I just want to cover a few different bases. First, I want to talk about the act of buying gear. And second, I want to talk about why I bought this piece of gear very specifically. And maybe me talking about the reason I bought it will help you make a choice for yourself. Next, I want to talk about storytelling and perspectives. Very specifically, the perspectives we generate through the use of different focal lengths and how different lenses can truly impact the perspective we create. Now, if you guys stick with me, I have a technique I really want to dig into that boils down to how you can take a lens like this 23mm or any other mid-length lens for that matter and turn it into a wide angle. It's a technique I've been using for years. It's a technique that's saved me thousands of dollars, and it's one I believe you guys will take a fair bit of interest in, so stick with me until I get there, right? Finally, I'll end with one thought on the X100VI that I think we all need to keep in mind, and it's really key to your purchasing decision for a camera like this, or really your purchasing decision for any camera or piece of camera equipment at all. So let's dig in. To get started, here's a thought on buying new gear, something that is a really hot item to debate, and there are no correct answers. If someone ever tells you you shouldn't get a piece of gear because it's not going to make you better, go ahead and ignore them. That's not a fair analysis. If someone ever tells you the opposite, that a new piece of gear is the thing that will take you to the next level, go ahead and ignore them. That's just not useful. Now, my motto is that new gear does not make you a better photographer, but better tools do. So one thing you need to understand is who you are as a shooter and what your ambitions are. Because if you can understand what you're trying to do, if you have images in your head, if you have use cases in mind, if you have situations that have challenged you and the gear that you brought to them, then you can begin to understand a lot better what it is you actually need to buy. And ultimately, you can derive what a better tool is. My choice in getting the X100VI was largely fueled by an understanding of what I wanted out of a camera. Now, I tried to make that specific setup with the X-T5. I bought a pancake lens, I slimmed this down as much as I could, and I figured that might do the trick, but in the end, it probably could have. But I've got the X100VI anyway because it did it just a little bit better. Now, I'm going to dig into all the reasons I bought this camera in a second, but first, go ahead and buy a new piece of gear if you believe it's going to be a better tool for the job that you are trying to accomplish. If you're going out to shoot owls in the late day in Wyoming winter, then don't get an X100VI because while it might be a fun new piece of gear, it's not a better tool. A Z9 with a 400mm and a teleconverter is going to be the better tool, and that's your analysis to make, okay? So go ahead and buy gear if you want, but make sure it's the better tool. And if it's not the better tool, at least make sure it inspires you, right? Because ultimately, when we're inspired and when we have fun using gear, then we get out and use that gear, and that also makes us a better photographer. So at least find a sense of inspiration in your gear. So why exactly did I buy the X100VI? Well, it boiled down to a few different things. First and foremost is going to be the size and the build. This is the smallest camera I've ever owned, and it's not particularly close. Contrary to what people tell you, it's still a lot smaller than the X-T5, even when you put a pancake lens on it. It's hard exactly to quantify, but when you get rid of the SLR shape, when you slim down the grip, when you ultimately put on an inbuilt lens and you compact the camera towards the center, as is the case with fixed lens cameras, you get something that is distinctly more compact. And that was a really compelling thing for me. Now, why did I want that? Well, I've been doing more and more long distance runs, long distance hikes, big adventures where I really want to have something that's weight accommodating. Am I not going to bring the X-T5 anymore? Or is the Z8 always going to stay home? No, it's not. In fact, my Nikon Z8 or my Fujifilm X-T5, one or the other typically, will always be in my bag with something like a 16-80, a 17-28, a 35-150. I'm very often going to have something like that in my bag, other than for running kind of trips. When I'm running, it's only ever going to be this. But typically, on a big trip, I'm going to have those other cameras, or one of those other cameras, and I need a backup camera and I need a content camera. Now, content doesn't necessarily mean content creation. It more means filling the gaps between the frames I'm focusing on with the bigger camera. So if my Z8, for instance, is taking a photo of a moonbow, a rainbow in the middle of the night, well, while it's doing those long exposures, I can be walking around with something like this, filming footage, taking other photos, capturing the scene and building that story. The Fujifilm X100VI has almost all of the features that the X-T5 has in terms of photo and video. While you can't change the lens, everything else about this camera is pretty dang close to flagship quality. So what that means for me is something small, something incredibly potent, and something incredibly durable. That is why I bought the X100VI, because it accompanies my primary camera in a way that is absolutely exceptional. When I want to go out with one single camera, I know that this camera can be a one-stop shop for everything I need to do. And if I walk out the door with just this camera, I can take the photos I want to take, and I can make the videos I want to make. Now, last and very personal to me, I realized very recently that 35mm is my most used focal length. So this camera, 23mm, effectively 35 in full frame equivalent, is exactly what I need in terms of how I like to see the world. A quick thought on storytelling and the importance of that kind of photography. Specifically in a world of so many photographers, an abundance of incredible creativity, and especially with this influx of AI content, the beautiful photo, the perfect photo, is far less interesting and captivating for people at this point, and especially moving forward. So what is it that people are going to attach to when you are putting it in front of them? I believe it's photo series, it's narratives, it's stories. And so we all need to get better at telling stories. Now, the story actually can be that one beautiful photo you take. And I'm not trying to discourage you from trying to take the perfect photo, but take the time to build a series around it, to pick up the details in front of you, the people around you, the feeling in the air. All of those things add to the narrative that you're trying to build. And if I've learned anything over the last year as my photography has grown, it's really that those stories and the photos that compose them, they often end up being what you value the most. Moreover, they often end up being what other people value the most and what holds their attention the best. It's all a complicated irony, I suppose. We all should understand that creating art about capturing what's in front of us has to do with the story, but I think, in a sense, that's been a bit lost in the weeds. So finding those roots, getting back to the idea of storytelling, it's so key to the longevity of our work. So now, considering that concept of photographic storytelling and how that's what really captivates people, or at least that's the direction that creativity is heading in the photographic realm, I think it's really important to understand the poignancy, the importance of the perspectives you create by choosing different focal lengths. When you build a world with a wide angle, you create a space for people to walk into, a narrative for them to understand through a single frame if done well. When you use a normal focal length or a mid-range focal length like a 35-50, you create a space that is relatable. It's a window through which the viewer can view the scene that's going to make them feel as if they're in that scene because it's exactly as they would see it. It's the closest to their eyes. Now, finally, if you use a telephoto, you create details. You create a sort of cinema in a sense. It's unrelatable because it can't be seen without that lens, but that doesn't mean it detracts from the scene. it builds a roundness to it. It creates a sense of clarity, and when done well, it complements the other photos in your sequence incredibly well. Now, does this mean that you have to use a normal focal length to create a compelling scene that's relatable for people? Or does it mean that if you take out a wide angle, you don't create the world for people to walk into? No, absolutely not. You can be incredibly effective with just a telephoto. Similarly, you can be incredibly effective with just a 35 or just a 14. All I'm suggesting is that understanding and considering the perspectives that you are adding and taking away by using different focal lengths is really, really key to a more intentional approach to photography. Now, intentional photography is how we take our photos to the next step. Now, before I dig into my favorite technique for taking a lens like this and turning it into so many other lenses, as a result saving you so much money, I want to remind you that I've released an ebook, an introduction to photographic storytelling, that you can find on my website. Now, the best way to get that for a very good deal is to sign up for my newsletter using the link below. Once you've signed up, you'll get a discount code that makes it really quite accessible. Anyway, the technique I like to use to take a lens like this 23mm, and turn it into a 20mm, a 16mm, a 14mm. It's photo stitching. Now, the idea of photo stitching is taking a number of photos that cover a broader frame than what your lens can organically cover, and then stitching them together as if you're sewing them together into a quilt, really. Now, the way I go about stitching photos is pretty haphazard, right? A lot of people use tripods. A lot of people are very technical about it. I just take photo, 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 or if I want more than that, I'll take 3, 12, 12, 12, whatever. You can combine as many photos as you want. Now, once you've taken all those photos, making sure each frame overlaps at least, call it 20 to 30%, then you can bring those all into Lightroom, highlight them all, and I'll be showing this on the screen, and click Photo Merge. Once you merge them together, Lightroom does its best job to find a great way to bring them into a single frame, and it does a really good job. So you take that frame, edit it like you would, but understand that it's now significantly larger and as wide as you built it. It's a great way to save money because ultimately I don't have to buy a 14 to 24. My 17 to 28 with just 2 extra seconds can be stitched together into something much, much wider. It's a technique I really encourage you guys to play with, and it's a lot of fun. It takes a bit to start to see the world that way, right? But if you get used to considering a scene as something that you can stitch together, it does become quite natural. And Lightroom at this point does such an incredibly good job at it, you don't really have to doubt whether it'll be able to get it done or not. So the X100VI was a purchase rooted in all these different things about me. The kind of focal length I trend towards, the kinds of photography I'm doing more often, the quality of gear that I aim to bring with me on every single adventure in the name of making sure it survives. These things all fueled this camera, but in the end, there's gonna be another one that comes out in about a year or 2 or whatever. The X100, 7, 8, 9, they're all gonna come along the way, and I encourage you not to wait for the next best thing. You can go ahead and get a camera knowing it's going to be replaced by something better whenever you realize that that tool is the better tool for you. In many ways, the X100F or the X100VI would have been fine for me, other than I shoot loads of video. So having in-body image stabilization, having internal NDs, having the kinds of video codecs and specs that I have been using in my Fujifilm X-T5, having those all in the X100VI is incredible. For me, this is a flagship camera that weighs barely more than my wallet. And that's really, really important. I guess my wallet's a lot lighter after buying this, but enough about that. Anyway, guys, I will have all kinds of thoughts on this camera shortly, I'm sure. I am in love. This is the most beautiful camera I've personally ever owned. So I'm excited to share the images, the stories, the composition, all of it with you and with this camera at my side. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.